welcome to another painting video. Today I'll be painting a very unique troupe from Moonstone called the Wyrdwood. This set consists of 2 sentient trees and a shape-shifting fox lady. And they all look amazing, yet very much out of my wheelhouse. I wanted to give each tree its own distinct look and feel, while Drayner, the fox lady, presented a unique challenge. I've never painted such a delicate miniature before. But without further ado, let's begin, shall we? To set the overall shadows for all the models, I started by priming them black. Then I airbrushed a dark plum over the entire model, which will help establish deep, moody shadows. Next, using dark ivory, I sprayed a zenithal highlight. This technique brings out all the details while keeping the shadows I built in the previous step deep in the recesses. Let's begin with the first tree, Ruwt. I wanted to give him a cold brown look. I started with a base coat of Dryad Bark. Then I layered Baharroth Brown over all the raised areas, covering the entire tree to build up a more nuanced texture. Next, I mix Baharroth Brown with Kislev Flesh and repeat the process, focusing on the highlights. To give Ruwt that pale brown appearance, I finished the layering with pure Kislev Flesh, which add a cold yet earthy tone. For variation, I brightened his face by layering Gargoyle Grey, followed by Great Hall Grey, and then I highlighted with Moonstone for extra definition. To enhance the cold tones further, I shaded the entire model with a watered down Targor Rage shade. Finally, I applied Dirty Down Moss Special Effects paint, which added color variation and a more realistic tree-like finish. The great thing about this paint is you can easily adjust or remove it with just a damp brush to refine the effect. Ruwt has some mushrooms growing on his bark, and I wanted them to stand out. I started by painting them with Wraithbone. Then I applied Frost Heart Contrast paint, which gave the mushrooms a luminous glow that contrasts beautifully with the rest of Ruwt's bark and fits well with the overall basing colors. Next, we move on to Snag. For this towering tree, I aimed for a warmer tone. I began with a base coat of Doombull Brown. I then layered on Scrag Brown to brighten the bark, followed by Deathclaw Brown for more depth. The highlights were added with Kislev Flesh to pick out the raised areas and give the bark some warmth. Kislev Flesh is a very versatile highlighting color. For some variation, I painted certain areas of the bark using a mix of uniform gray and scrag brown. Then I layered on a mix of ash gray and Deathclaw Brown. To finish off, I highlighted with a blend of Company Gray and Kislev Flesh for a natural look. I shaded the entire model with Agrax Earthshade to emphasize the shadows and bring out the contrast. And just like Ruwt, I added Dirty Down Moss for that realistic tree-like feel. There's a poor gnome skeleton caught in the back of Snag. I started with a base coat of Rhinox hide. To lighten the raised areas, I layered on Mournfang Brown, leaving Rhinox hide in the recesses to give the bones depth. Next, I applied ochre as another layer. still ensuring the previous shades remain visible in the deeper recesses. For the final highlights, I used Ushabti Bone, followed by Screaming Skull to give the skeleton that aged bleached look. The rope holding the sign was painted with snakebite leather, the sign itself with Gorgontra fur, and the nails with Basilicanum Grey for a worn metallic look. Now on to Drayner. For her human skin, I wanted a fair, delicate tone. I started with a base coat of ruby skin. I then layered on opal skin for a soft, natural complexion, followed by a highlight with pearl skin to create a pale look. For added realism, I mixed Berserker Bloodshade with Lamia Medium and applied it to areas where the blood would naturally flow close to the surface, like her cheeks, lips, nose, and hands. To make her lips pop, I used pure Berserker Bloodshade. Drayner's fox fur needed a striking fiery orange-red. I base coated the fur with a thinned down Doombull Brown, allowing it to settle into the recesses for shadow. Next, I layered on burning ore, slowly building up the color towards the tips of the fur. I then added Fire Dragon Bright, followed by Lava Orange. And finally, Flickering Flame, each layer smaller than the last to create depth. I finished with a highlight of Inner Light, sketching out the individual fur strands as best as I could. The model is quite tiny, so it was a real challenge, but I'm mostly happy with how it turned out. For the white fur, I started with a base coat of Grey Castle. I then layered on worn stone, finishing with a highlight of Brainmatter Beige to give the white fur a soft, natural transition. To contrast against the vibrant orange fur, I painted Drayner's dress with a base coat of a watered-down Ahriman Blue and shaded it with Coelia Greenshade. Then gradually layered on Ahriman Blue mixed with Temple Guard Blue. For the next layers, I applied pure Temple Guard Blue, finishing with a highlight of Baharroth Blue to achieve a striking blue turquoise dress that contrasts beautifully with her fiery fur. The cords around her dress were base coated with olive drab, then layered with necrotic flesh. For highlights, I mixed necrotic flesh with ice yellow, finishing with pure ice yellow for a bright contrast. These green bands work really well against the turquoise of the dress. Unfortunately, I didn't capture footage of the final details on Drayner. I finished the model by painting her eyes and the flowers in her hair, bringing everything together. Overall, this troupe was a challenging project. It took me out of my comfort zone, but that's what I love about Moonstone. It always pushes me to try out new things. I am mostly pleased with how they turned out, and they look great along with my other Leshavult characters. Next week, I'll be painting some spooky, never-ending nights of the Shades of Moonreach faction just in time for Halloween. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Instagram, where I'll post pictures of current projects and behind-the-scenes stuff. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.